The first flame, the source of the Age of Fire, isn't a constant. It's fading, uneven, more like a dying ember than a steady blaze. And the entire world feels like it's built around that slow collapse, like everything is just trying to hold on to the last bit of warmth. Because the flame can't sustain itself. It never could. It survives by consuming what's given to it. Life, souls, humanity. It draws strength from sacrifice. And that idea that nothing persists on its own, that strength has to be taken or given, shows up everywhere in Dark Souls. It's not just one cycle. It's cycles within cycles. Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight, understood that better than anyone. When the flame began to fade, he didn't accept it. He linked it, burned himself to extend its life. But that wasn't just a one-time act. It created a system, a new cycle. From that point on, the world depended on others repeating the same sacrifice. Not just gods, but anyone strong enough to serve as fuel. The flame doesn't solve its own decay. It pushes that responsibility outward, creating a loop that feeds into itself, a cycle sustained by smaller cycles within it. And that's where the moral tension starts to build. Because preserving the light doesn't come from growth. It comes from consumption. And the undead mirror that exact same structure. They don't just hollow because time passes. They hollow because they lose their connection to meaning. Their sense of self erodes. The world becomes distant, foggy, harder to understand. But there's a way to push back against that. Humanity. The more humanity an undead carries, the more clearly they can perceive the world. Things feel sharper, more valuable, more real. But that clarity comes at a cost, because that same humanity has to be burned to restore form, to resist hollowing, to stay anchored in existence. So, just like the flame, the undead survive by consuming something finite, something meaningful. They're not generating strength, they're borrowing it, taking it in, using it up, and doing whatever they can to last just a little longer. Another cycle, nested inside the first. To see clearly is to risk losing what sustains you, but to preserve yourself is to slowly lose your ability to see at all. That tension isn't accidental, it's structural. As hollowing deepens, that loss becomes more than physical. It becomes psychological. Characters start to notice it. Big Hat Logan warns that reality itself begins to blur. Like the mind can't be trusted anymore. And then there's Lucatiel of Mira, who puts it in much more personal terms. She talks about her memories fading, starting with the oldest, about her thoughts growing hazy, and eventually she's left wondering what will even remain of her when everything is gone. Her story isn't just about losing strength. It's about losing the ability to recognize what matters. And the world reflects that same idea. Places like the Undead Burg, the Valley of Drakes, Drangleic, they don't just feel ruined. They feel forgotten. Like they've already lost the meaning they once had. Everything is fading. Not just physically, but perceptually. And all of it ties back to those cycles within cycles, systems that sustain themselves by slowly eroding the things inside them. Aldia, scholar of the First Sin, questions it directly. He challenges the idea of linking the flame, asks whether it is truly a defiance of fate or just another layer of it. Because every time the fire is prolonged, something else is lost. Not just lives, but identity, agency, understanding. Even the smaller details reinforce this. Hollowed enemies become weaker, less aware. The more they decay, the less they seem to engage with the world at all. And a across the series, mechanics themselves start to shift. In the first game, humanity directly affects how you experience the world. By the third, that connection is almost gone, which says something important. This isn't a rule, it's a pattern, a repeating structure, cycles within cycles, slowly wearing everything down. By the time you reach Dark Souls 3, that structure starts to break, because the system still exists, but the participants don't. The Lord of Cinders, being like Aldrich's Devourer of Gods and Yorm the Giant, they're meant to link the fire, to give themselves up just like Gwyn did. That's the role they're supposed to play. That's the role they already have played. But now, most of them refuse. And that refusal changes everything. Because for the first time, the world expects sacrifice, but the ones meant to provide it no longer agree. The cycle is still turning, but the smaller cycles inside of it are starting to fail. The exchange breaks down. There's nothing fundamentally different about the flame. It still needs fuel. But now, there's no one willing to be burned. And that exposes something that was always there. The entire world runs on borrowed strength. The flame borrows from those who link it. The undead borrow from the humanity they consume. Every layer depends on something beneath it, something that can be taken, used, and eventually exhausted. Cycles within cycles. And when those inner cycles stop, the whole structure collapses with them. By Dark Souls 3, the fire still burns, but it feels hollow. Not because it's weak, but because everything that sustained it has already been drained over and over and over again. There's almost nothing left to take. And that shifts the question. It's no longer just, should the fire continue? It becomes, what happens when the cycle runs out of cycles? Across the entire series, the pattern stays consistent. The undead hollow, something is sacrificed to push back against that decay, and that sacrifice shapes whatever comes next. Everything is connected. Every action has a cost. Every form of persistence depends on something else being consumed. And taken together, Gwyn's choice, Aldia's doubts, Lucatiel's fading identity, and the Lord's refusal, they all point to the same underlying truth. Nothing in this world survives on its own. Not the flame, not the undead, not even memory. Everything that continues does so by taking from something else, and eventually, there may be nothing left to give.